5 days after the UK election, NATO leaders will gather. This was last year's summit in Lithuania. The war in Ukraine will again be top of the agenda when they meet to mark the alliance's 75th anniversary in Washington, D.C. If the polls are right, it's likely to be the first international trip for a new UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. He'll be the new face on the global stage, but he's unlikely to bring many surprises with his foreign policy. It's now nearly 18 months since President Putin invaded Ukraine, and a new Labour government is bound to continue the UK's steadfast support for President Zelensky. When it comes to the war on Gaza, the party's election manifesto document says the UK will recognise a Palestinian state.
Keir's charismatic non-charisma and how it was perceived in the country.
But podcaster and academic Jason Pack says both Starmer and the man he's slated to be his foreign secretary, David Lammy, will be very cautious.
I do think he's going to be a gradualist once he's in. Like, even his statement in the manifesto of recognizing Palestine, they've had to walk it back, only when we're ready with the Americans, only at the end of a process. So, we can't expect things to change overnight, but Labour, of course, has more Muslim constituents than the Tories. Labour also cares more about international law. It's important to point out that Keir and David Lammy are both lawyers, and they've both talked about the ICC and the ICJ in very favourable terms.
It's now 8 years since what was arguably the most consequential vote for the UK in modern times. Brexit! Not an election, but the referendum that led to Brexit, Britain exiting the European Union. At the time, Starmer wanted to stay in Europe. It's now an issue observers say he's tried to avoid because it remains such a toxic issue.
There's not really that appetite to revisit the referendum, which dominated our politics for so long, and I think most people would rather have a period of calmness and stability. However, in government, I think that Labour will come under increasing amounts of pressure from businesses, which it's made a big effort to court the attention of in the last few years, and also from its own membership. It could have up to 500 MPs, and Labour MPs will tend to be very pro-European.
There may be another good reason for the EU and UK to work closer together in the coming months, and that's the election on the other side of the Atlantic on November the 5th. Donald Trump is leading in the polls, and to use a very British expression, Starmer, a former human rights lawyer leading a left-of-centre party, may not be Trump's cup of tea. James Bays, Al Jazeera, London.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.